The quiet man who silenced an entire room. Picture this. A packed town hall in Columbus, Ohio. Cameras rolling. Political tension thick in the air. Conservative commentator Karoline Leavitt thinks she's about to score an easy win by mocking a congressman's husband sitting quietly in the fourth row. She had no idea she was about to meet her match in the most unexpected way possible. It was just supposed to be another Wednesday night political forum. Nothing special. Folding chairs, local TV crews, the usual mix of curious residents and college students looking for extra credit. But Karoline Leavitt had flown in that afternoon, bringing her sharp tongue and cable news attitude with her. Across the room sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, poised and ready to discuss family policies and child care. She looked professional, focused, gripping a water bottle like armor. This wasn't her first rodeo with hostile crowds. But what nobody noticed, what the cameras missed at first, was the man 4 rows back in a simple navy blazer. No tie, no fanfare, just alert eyes and quiet confidence. That was Terrence Crockett, Jasmine's husband. For years, Terrence had stayed in the shadows of his wife's political career. No Twitter account, no campaign ads, no microphone grabbing. He supported her privately, powerfully, but always from behind the scenes. He only came tonight because she asked him to. She needed one familiar face in what promised to be a hostile room. The evening started civilly enough. Questions about crime stats, family values, the usual political theater. Then Karoline stepped to the microphone, and the energy shifted. She started slow, touching on traditional conservative talking points. But then she leaned into the podium with that practiced smirk that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "I just think it's interesting," she said, "how some politicians parade around talking about strong families, but their own husbands can't even stand up straight. What was his name? Terrence? Looks like the type who lets his wife wear the pants, the belt, and the shoes." The jab hung in the air like smoke. Gasps. Nervous laughter. The moderator blinked, unsure whether to intervene or let her dig her own grave. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her grip on that water bottle tightened just slightly, but her face remained stone. And in the fourth row, Terrence blinked slowly, looked down at his hands, and after 5 seconds of perfect stillness, stood up. Not fast, not angry, calm as morning coffee. Heads turned. More heads turned. Even Karoline paused as this quiet man stepped into the center aisle and started walking forward. The cameraman wasn't sure whether to zoom in or pan out. There was no security rush, no moderator intervention, just silence and one man moving with purpose. He reached the front and stopped. Not at the podium, not confrontational, just a few feet away, directly in her line of sight. When he spoke, his voice was level, strong enough to carry but not loud enough to echo. "I heard what you said." Simple, no flourish, but it cracked the tension like glass. Karoline raised an eyebrow, trying to regain control. "Sir, this isn't the Q&A portion. You can take a seat." Terrence didn't move. "You brought me up, not my wife, not my kids. Me. So I'm going to speak, and you're going to listen. You don't have to agree, and I'm not asking for applause. But if you're going to mention my name in front of a crowd, you'll hear it from me." The room held its breath. Karoline forced a laugh. "I didn't mean anything personal. It was a joke. You're technically a public figure now." That's when Terrence tilted his head, and his response changed everything. "I'm not a public figure. I'm a private man who married a public woman. I show up when she needs me. I leave her space when she needs to fight her battles. And I stay silent when the attacks are about policy. But when it turns personal, when you look at a black man sitting with his hands folded and decide that means he's weak, then silence becomes permission. And I won't be part of that. No theatrics. Just truth." The room was locked in. He turned slightly, addressing the whole audience now, but keeping his words aimed at Karoline. "I know who I am. I don't need to swing back to prove I'm a man. I don't need a podium or a title. I don't post photos to show I'm present. I'm there when it counts. I hold my wife's hand when she walks out of rooms like this. I listen when she's had to defend herself to people who don't care what she actually said. And when the day is over, I tell her she can breathe because I got the rest." A pause. One perfect beat. That's what strength looks like. Someone in the back sniffled. Someone whispered, "Damn." Karoline tried to recover, her confidence visibly shaken. So this is a speech about what? Honor? Gender roles? Are we rewriting masculinity now? Terrence smiled, but it wasn't amused. It was quiet, almost sad. No, we're just reminding you what respect looks like. But then came the moment that truly silenced the room. You mock a man who doesn't jump in front of cameras. You think that makes him soft. But what's soft is using your platform to poke at people you don't understand, thinking the loudest voice always wins. His voice lowered but didn't lose power. What if the strongest thing a man can do is not show up swinging? What if it's carrying someone else's weight without making it about himself? He looked directly at Karoline one last time. If your ideas are strong, they stand on their own. You don't need to drag someone's family into it. If you believe in traditional values, act like it. Show some. Then he turned to Jasmine. And if I'm weak for standing behind her, so be it. I'd rather be called weak for holding her up than be remembered for tearing someone down. Without waiting for applause or reaction, Terrence simply turned and walked back to his seat. The silence that followed him wasn't confused anymore. It was stunned, focused, respectful. Karoline stood at the podium, smirk gone, shuffling her notes. Her usual confidence had cracked. When she tried to continue with her talking points, her voice bounced off faces that were no longer really listening. The room's attention had shifted to something deeper. By the time the town hall ended, people were walking to their cars slower, talking quieter, thinking harder about what they'd witnessed. But outside that room, something extraordinary was happening. Within minutes, phones were lighting up. Clips hit social media before the event was even over. Jasmine Crockett's husband shuts down Karoline Leavitt with pure class. Best thing I've ever seen at a town hall. Every man needs to hear what this guy just said. The moment exploded online, not through campaign staff or coordinated par, just regular people who saw something honest and passed it along. By morning, one clip had over 1 million views. Veterans, teachers, young fathers, grandmothers, people from all walks of life were sharing their thoughts. A high school teacher played it in class. A father in Phoenix tweeted that Terrence made him rethink how he shows up for his wife. When Jasmine was invited on major networks the following week, she shut down attempts to center the story on Karoline's attack. "This wasn't about defending me," she said. "This was about what happens when you build a family on mutual respect. My husband didn't come to defend me. He came to remind people that strength doesn't have to stomp into the room. Sometimes it just stands up and speaks when it needs to." Terrence never gave interviews or tried to capitalize on the attention. He went back to running his shop, checking on his mother, living his quiet life. But people who'd seen the clip recognized him at the grocery store, giving respectful nods or simply saying, "Thank you." A week later, the headlines moved on to new controversies. That's how it always goes. But in their small Columbus home, the moment still lived with them. One night, Jasmine came home late from a committee meeting, exhausted. Terrence was in the kitchen, quietly cleaning up after dinner. As he handed her a glass of water without being asked, she looked at him and said, "You didn't have to do that, you know." "I know," he replied, "but I'm glad I did. I wasn't even mad at first. But something clicked. If I didn't say anything, she'd think she was right. Not just about me, but about every man like me. And I couldn't let that ride." "You weren't trying to protect me, were you?" "No," he said. "I was protecting something bigger than us. The kind of love that doesn't need defending, but sometimes needs explaining." The clip kept moving across the internet. Not because it was dramatic or newsworthy, but because it was rare. A man didn't shout, a woman didn't flinch, and somehow that said everything people needed to hear. Terrence Crockett never spoke about it again publicly. He remained a man behind the scenes. And Jasmine kept walking into hostile rooms with that same fire. But now people saw something different when she did. They saw the man in the fourth row in the space he made by simply standing up. In a world full of loud voices demanding attention, his stillness stood out. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to raise your voice. It's to know exactly when to use it. Real strength doesn't need volume. It just needs a right moment to speak.